Thanks very much, Andy. Welcome everybody to this meeting of the Cabinet. Can I just remind us to mute when we're not speaking, Keith?
Yeah.
Thank you. And before we start, can I take this opportunity? It's the first opportunity I've had of congratulating County Councillor Alzar Ali on his honour granted in the New Year's Honours List. Well done, Alzar.
Thank you, Jeff.
Here. Well done.
Okay. Let's get on to the agenda. Do we have any apologies for absence? I don't think so. Do we? Are we okay?
Yep.
Are there any pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests? No. I'll just click on for the sidebar. Can I forgot to say it there. I said if you do want to speak, can you just raise your hand? That's the easiest way. I will try and keep my eye on the chat bar as well, but it would be easier if you raise your hands. Okay, thank you. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of January. Do we agree those as a correct record?
Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. That brings us on to item 4, which is the usual procurement report. And it is the usual process, but it would probably be remiss not to mention that we've got one item in there that is significantly more than the usual procurement contracts, and that's for the South Lancaster Housing Investment Fund, £106 million, which is part of the overall scheme, 261 million, of which 140 million has been granted by the government for this really worthwhile scheme, and it's good to be getting it off the ground. As I said, it's a larger amount than normal in the procurement process, but it is following the agreed lines. Do you agree those items?
Great.
Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Item 5 is following on from that, the M6 Junction 33 reconfiguration with the link road. Michael.
Thank you, Leader. Good afternoon, colleagues. This report is an exciting report from my point of view because the reconfiguration of the Junction 33 on the M6 allows the south of Lancaster to be opened up for significant development moving forwards, growing the economy of the north of the county. With regard to the report in itself, an extensive consultation took place, and we were very pleased that almost 600 responses were received from the residents, businesses, Chamber of Commerce, etc. And I'd like to thank each and every person that got involved in the consultation and gave their views, which were very much appreciated. And I'd particularly like to thank our officers for their work throughout the consultation and in putting this excellent report together. Colleagues, a Central 1 route option, which will provide a link road closely following the western boundary of the M6, as shown on page 93, which is Appendix C, is recommended as the preferred option moving forwards. And there's a number of reasons for this. First of all, it complies with the aims of the Lancaster Local Plan and the objectives of the reconfiguration of Junction 33. From an environmental perspective, it reduces air pollution and reduces carbon dioxide emissions and achieves a greater relief of congestion. And from a practical reason, it's more feasible to actually construct it. And importantly, it's also the preferred route option of the public. So for all those reasons, that is the preferred route and the one which we should adopt today, in my view. The report also sets out 3 options for the Lancaster city centre movement and public realm strategy, which are recommended for further analysis and consultation to take place later this summer. And those 3 routes which are set out are routes 4, route 8A and route 6A, which are set out in the report on pages 19 and 20. So I wish to move those recommendations and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Did you want to add anything, Keith?
I think just to thank you, Leader, just to reiterate what Michael said, it's a very big project. It's really pleasing that we're doing this in that area, and it's Lancashire. And it's also pleasing the number of people that did respond, because I think the officers did an excellent job on it, but a lot of people did respond to this, and a lot of people made very, very good comments, and it's a really good report. So I'm not obviously going to go over what Michael said, but I'm really looking forward to getting it done. And I suppose if it's all right with you, Leader, it takes us on to the next item if you want me to go through that.
Well, yes,
unless somebody else wants to comment on it, but it's just to say how well it's been done, and again, thanks to the officers and all the members of different organisations of the public that did respond and took a big interest in it, because it is a big project, and I'd like to thank them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. I haven't seen anybody wanting to speak. So do we accept the recommendations in the report?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Which brings us on to item 6, Keith. Over to you.
Yeah, well, I'm pleased about that, because if we hadn't agreed that, we couldn't do item 6. So I'm pleased that we have agreed it all. That's why I chipped my bits in to make sure we're all singing and going along in the right direction. All this really is the reconfiguration of the link road, and it's the powers and preparation of a document, the land assembly and planning under the development consent order. Obviously, we will have to maybe do negotiations with landowners. We need the powers, or the council needs the powers, to do all these things and reconfigure it in a timely manner, because there is time scales on this. And the report really is the M6 junction refiguration, the link road, and it's subject to an early report that the Cabinet had. And below, obviously, the Cabinet's approval for the use of powers and preparation of the documentation for the land assembly and planning in respect of South Lancashire M6 road scheme. A further report into relation to the full scheme will come to the Cabinet in the future, but it is obviously a key decision. The recommendations are there, and really to authorise the preparation of relevant documentation and taking other procedural steps towards drafting a development consent order prior to submission of any application. There's 3 things there, but that's the important one. So I'll take questions on it if anybody wishes. It's all there to look at. It's a big scheme. It's one of the biggest that we'll be undertaking in the future, and it does open up that area, and it opens up that part of Lancaster, and I'm pleased to bring it to the Cabinet, and I hope you'll support it and approve it.
Thank you, Keith. Are there any questions or comments? I don't see any. Sorry, Michael.
Thanks, Leader. Yes, just briefly, just to support everything that Councillor Hayden has said. It's part of our very significant ambitions, as we said, for the north of the county, to open that up to growth. And I think working with the government, we will achieve a great scheme moving forwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. No, just to say that from personal experience and for many people around here, the problem at Galgate has been a long-term one, particularly at busy times, queuing through the village. So much relief to them. So that's a really good project. I think it'll be a game changer for which is the small village of Galgate.
Yeah, absolutely right. Do we agree the recommendations on page 114?
Yes.
Agreed.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leader.
Item 7, you again, Keith.
Thank you, Leader. This is Lancashire County Council Bus Station South Access, Lord Street and Tide Barn Street. And it's an experimental order which we're wishing to make permanent. A little bit of background to this, obviously. We did the alterations around the bus station. The subway was closed. There is a bus gate going on there to stop traffic going through. We have had motorists running through and going through the bus station itself, which is dangerous. The main concern to me was obviously with the subway being closed, we need to protect the public, we need to protect people in the city, and we want people to come and visit and have a pleasant experience. We don't want them to be in any way hurt. So I'm really pleased to make this a permanent order. The bus gate will be in. It'll be limited to traffic, and it'll be a good help to anybody that with impaired vision, disabilities, and the public in general. So I hope you will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Are there any questions or comments? No. Do we agree with the recommendation?
Agreed.
Yes. Yeah, agreed.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Item 8, Philippa.
Thank you, Chair. Well, actually, I'll just introduce items 8 to 10. I'll take them separately, but just to set them in context, they're all to do with school admission arrangements. And as we all know, those arrangements are quite complex and highly regulated processes, and they're about ensuring fairness and transparency to the admissions process, which is crucially important to all parents when they're selecting a school for their child, which is probably one of the most important decisions that they're going to make. So these are important papers, quite technical, and I'll try and make them as simple as I possibly can in terms of my explanation. So item 8 is about establishing the relevant area for consultation on the admission arrangements for Lancashire schools and academies. The County Council for this year aren't proposing any changes to the existing admission arrangements for school years 23, 24 to 25, 26. And they've consulted widely on that, but perhaps not surprisingly, because there aren't any changes, there were actually no responses to the consultation that were received on it. So Cabinet is simply asked to agree the definition of the county's relevant areas, and it should remain unchanged for those school years.
Thank you, Philippa. I don't see any questions or comments. Straightforward, that, isn't it? Do we agree?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Philippa.
Okay, thank you. So item 9, as an admissions authority for community and voluntary controlled schools, the County Council is required by law to consult widely about the proposed admission arrangements. And during the autumn term last year, we consulted with the governors of these schools on the arrangements for 22-23 school year, and the proposed admission numbers are set out in appendices A to D of the paper. As well as the governors, as you can see from the report, other interested parties and the public were also consulted on the proposals. The responses from the governors and the community and the comments from officers to the proposed arrangements and the numbers are all set out in Appendix E of the report, which also summarises the recommendations of the Executive Director of Education and Children's Services. Now, you will have noted on page 162 the priority order for primary schools within a geographical priority area. The first priority, item 1, is unsurprisingly and quite rightly are looked after children. And I want to make a clarification to this item to ensure that as a county we stay ahead of any best practice guidance. We're aware that a few neighbouring authorities, Wigan and Sefton and one or two others, have been in discussion with the Office of the Schools Adjudicator about children who are looked after or who have previously been looked after, who are legally adopted from overseas. This will likely to be a very small number of children in any year, but we want to be sure that our guidance is clear ahead of anything else that may come forward. So we intend to make the current item on page 162, item 1A, and add an item 1B to the priority list as follows, and I'll read that out in full so that it can be recorded. It's looked after children and those who have previously been looked after who are legally adopted from overseas, and in brackets it would say see note X below, and then it would carry on with the priority list from then on. So I hope that's clear. That news has come out very recently, but we wanted to take the opportunity to put it in now whilst we could. So other than that, Cabinet is asked to adopt the amendments as outlined in the paper.
Yeah, thank you, Philippa. Yes, that is very clear and very necessary. I don't see any questions or comments. Do we agree with the recommendations on page 135?
Agreed.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you. Philippa,
okay.
again.
Yeah. So item 10. This is also to do with admissions. So every authority has a statutory duty to formulate a scheme to coordinate the admission process for every state-funded school in the area. The legislation for that's in the schools admissions regulations, and the legislation is very clear that the Secretary of State for Education must be informed that a scheme is in place, and that if we don't have a scheme and don't agree a scheme, then the Secretary of State will impose a scheme on the authority if that doesn't come through. Obviously, we don't want to be in that situation, and we've been consulting widely on a draft scheme and timetable for Lancashire schools, academies and free schools for the academic year 2022-23. The consultees included all schools and academies, governors, diocesan representatives and neighbouring authorities. All that's in appendices A and B of the report. We had one response to the consultation that came from Star Academies, which commented on the clarity of the coordinated scheme, and their comments have been taken on board and amendments made in it. And I should emphasise for parents and anyone listening in that you'll have noted that the County Council scheme for 2022-23 maintains the focus on online applications as the main method of applying for school places. Every voluntary aided and foundation school and academy governing body in Lancashire will be asked to adopt the scheme during the spring term of 2021, and any participating free schools will also be asked to adopt the scheme. So Cabinet is asked to approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Philippa.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments? I don't see any. Do we agree the recommendations on page 183?
Yes,
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you very much. Item
Thank
11,
you.
Philippa.
Okay, so this paper is about the determination of home to school transport policy for the academic year 22-23. As you know, the local authority has a duty to provide free transport for all pupils of compulsory age, that's from 5 to 16, if, dependent on their age, their nearest suitable school or academy is beyond 2 or 3 miles from their home. That depends on their age. Help with travel costs is also available to pupils attending secondary schools whose parents are on qualifying benefits, and there's also denominational transport help if a pupil is attending a particular school on the grounds of faith and the school is between 2 and 15 miles away from their home. Additionally, transport arrangements are also made for children who cannot reasonably be expected to walk to the nearest school because the nature of the route is deemed to be unsafe to walk unaccompanied. The County Council reviews the home to school transport policy each year. There have been several consultations and changes to that policy in recent years, specifically in 2011, 2015 and 2018. And to ensure that children who start under one set of arrangements and continue to benefit from them until they conclude their education at that school or move to another school, any changes to policies are phased in. I can report that all the County Council's policy changes have now been in place for 5 years. Therefore, where an older pupil receives help with transport costs, but a younger sibling perhaps does not anymore because of a change in those policies, those differences within families should not occur. So following a further detailed review of the policy this year, there are no changes to the policy being proposed. So Cabinet is asked to approve the home to school transport policy for the academic year 22-23 as set out in Appendix A of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippa. Any questions or comments? No, I don't see any. Do we agree that?
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 12, Graham.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Leader. Good afternoon, everybody. Adult social care fees and charges. This is the item that comes round every year when we propose to increase the fees we pay to service providers to deliver adult care services. The accountants call these uplifts. The report also proposes increases in the charges that we make for services that we provide. The report then goes on to describe the financial impact these measures will have. To put this in context, let me first mention the sheer scale of adult care in the LCC area. We commission support for our people from about 800 different care providers, a community of about 35,000 carers and service users in community and residentially based settings. On this, we spend £465 million per year, 40% of the council's revenue budget. And let me put that in context. It's about 1.5 times the police budget for the whole of Pan Lancashire, and it is many times the entire budgets of all the district councils in Lancashire put together. Now, the past year has seen, as often been said, unprecedented challenges, and so it has to the care sector. Due to the ongoing effects of the pandemic, this has manifested itself in increased costs for providers in terms of staffing and in some cases reduced income due to reduced occupancy and attendance levels. Throughout the year, we have provided over £9 million of financial support to the care market during these difficult times through the Financial Assistance Scheme. We've provided £6 million worth of personal protective equipment, and we've administered £30 million of the Government Infection Control Grant. In this report, we look forward to the next financial year. Although we have very promising predictions coming out of vaccinations, it's still hard to estimate the continuing impact of the pandemic on the care market in 21-22 and how much additional funding, if any, will be available from central government. Now, in arriving at these proposals, we've engaged fully with the care providers, clinical commissioning groups, NHS Commissioning Support Unit in reaching these recommendations. Now, I want to emphasise the extent of the consultation. A one-time consultation with the service sector was conducted through a very small group representing the sector. We changed that because we did not think the consultation was satisfactory or broad enough. We now consult widely, and this has been made even wider through the wonder of Zoom, through which we can meet 200 to 300 people, service providers, at our fortnightly meetings. A major charity in the field has described the LCC as an exemplar. In setting the level of the increases we are proposing to pay to service providers, we have taken into account a number of cost pressures. Wages are the biggest element of any provider's costs, so the level of national living wage has impact on their costs. But that level is not always predictable. It was generally predicted that the national living wage would be increased by more than 5%. But in the government spending review in November of last year, it announced a lower increase of 2.1%, thus rising from £8.72 to £8.91 per hour for people aged 23 and over. Now, the national living wage increase does not represent the only cost pressure involved in delivering services. Whilst labour costs constitute a significant component, there are other areas of providers' cost bases that are forecast to change. The increases we propose therefore are weighted averages of the national living wage, pension auto-enrolment, inflation for non-staffing related costs, and also include an element that acknowledges the additional costs and/or pressures providers may still be incurring in their response to COVID-19 in the next financial year. Now, for residential care, we commission care from over 400 residential and nursing homes and fund placements for over 4,800 people. We recommend that the weekly older persons approved residential care rates are increased by 4.05% as tabulated on page 232 of your bundles. For other client groups such as mental health and learning disability, residential and nursing provision, the standard fee will be increased to the highest level as shown on that table of £619.17 per week. On the other side of the coin, we propose that fees for self-funders living in the County Council's own in-house older people's residential home also increased by 4.05%. But I should point out that very few of our residents are entirely self-funding. Some of them are entirely subsidised and some of them get help with it. Now, we are going to make big advances in managing care. Through the Healthier Lancashire and South Cumbria Partnership, we will be implementing a joint health and social care service specification for older adults, residential and nursing care, and that's going to start on the 1st of April. The specification has been co-produced with residential and nursing providers, and the proposed 21-22 fee rates will be applicable. The service specification has been developed with the aim of simplifying care delivery across health and social care, meaning that the same service standards will be expected from commissioners, irrespective of whether they are local authority or NHS. The service specification also has the aim of reducing the time needed to spend on administrative tasks and consolidating reporting requirements. This will allow more time to be spent with service users. If we move on to home care is delivered by over 280 providers across Lancashire to more than 6,000 people. Most of the care commissioned by the council is provided by a group of framework providers. This was a group of providers established in 2017, and the fees for the whole group were agreed then with an uplift every November. This eased procurement process very significantly. When the situation arises when the framework providers are unable to meet the demand, as can happen in a pandemic, we can use off-frame providers where the fee is agreed at the start of each care package. We're therefore proposing an uplift of 4.06% to be put in place for framework providers from November, and where the care is commissioned off-frame, to a similar uplift is provided. In supporting living, there are two areas here. These are generally a fee paid, a sleep-in fee, which is going up by 3.75%. So a flat fee of £63.48 per sleep-in shift. Now, if the person has to wake and actually provide a service, that'll also be going up by 3.75% and increases the approved rate to £16.64 per waking hour. Now, on extra care, there are two types of extra care. Now, we commission 5 purpose-built extra care schemes, as we've got in Ormskirk and Waterfoot, and 8 sheltered housing schemes that have a 24-hour domiciliary care for part of it. For the purpose-built extra care schemes, tenders for purpose-built extra care schemes included year 1 and year 2 prices, so that was in the tender. We propose an uplift of 4.06% on the contract anniversary where no tendered rate is available. This is in line with the off-framework home care. For sheltered housing schemes domiciliary care, extra care within sheltered housing scheme, again, we propose an uplift of 4.06% to be applied from April, in line with the off-framework provision. Now, for carers out there, we support about 7,300 carers through a personal budget awarded as a direct payment, depending on the level of support, either higher or lower, whichever is required. The scheme is intended to help people in their role as a carer, typically towards a relative or partner. It's proposed to uplift this annual payment in line with national living wage to £249.62 for the lower rate and £368.99 for the higher rate. Shared Lives, as you know, our outstanding Shared Lives service currently supports approximately 300 people. Care is family-based and provided by individuals and families. Shared Lives care is provided in a number of ways, from both simple overnight or day support, a week stay with a family, or permanent placement. The proposal is to uplift all Shared Lives cares by 2.18% in line with the national living wage. Now, Shared Lives carers are individuals operating in their own homes and therefore would not experience some of the cost pressures experienced by businesses with their premises and administrative overheads, hence the lower recommended uplift fee. Daytime support has suffered greatly during the pandemic. We support about 1,100 people, both older people and people with learning difficulties, through a variety of daytime support services. Support is delivered in a variety of locations, from traditional accommodation-based services to outdoor activity centres by approximately 60 providers. Now, during 2018-19, we established an open list of pre-qualified service providers who were contracted to meet our quality standards, and prices were agreed with individual providers at that time and have remained the same to date. Services are delivered in a variety of different ways and can be paid for by the hour or by the session. It is proposed to uplift the fees for all day service providers by 3.45% on the next contract anniversary. Contract anniversaries will differ depending on when the provider first contracted with the council on the approved list. Moving on to individual service funds. Individual service funds will receive uplift fees in line with the relevant service being purchased, with it in line with the rates proposed for those services. So that'll be, they'll just take the rate as the service which they provide. Now, council commissioned respite and short breaks. Through our respite or short break services, we provide support for carers to take a break from their caring responsibilities or support an individual through a short period of crisis. These services can provide a place within the supported living setting or residential home for a short period of time. We propose to uplift these fees for respite and short breaks in line with the relevant service being used. This would mean that residential respite and supported living respite will be uplifted in line with the rates I proposed earlier for those services. Direct payments, excuse me. Thank you. More than 3,600 people receive direct payments. This allows people to receive a personal budget on a prepayment card from the County Council to allow them to arrange and fund their own care needs. This can be by employing a personal assistant or purchasing their own care direct from a registered care provider. We propose an inflationary uplift of 4.06% to be applied to all weekly direct payments. Moving on that, we see that's what we're giving. Now, what are we getting? The charging policy. Now, service users are charged up to the actual cost of residential nursing and daycare, but that is always subject to the outcome of a detailed financial assessment under the Care Act 2014, which determines an individual's ability to pay. For non-residential services, including home care, supported living and direct payments, the current maximum hourly charge is £13.71, and that will be uplifted to £14.27, a 4.06% increase, that effective from the 5th of April of this year. Now, you must recall that for non-residential care, the majority of service users are financially assisted, either as a nil charge payer or their charge is capped according to their calculated weekly net disposal income. And that's what our proposals are. And I would ask Cabinet to approve the uplifts recommended and the charging policy listed in the executive summary at the beginning of this paper.
Thank you, Graham. Are there any questions or comments? No, I don't see any. The recommendations are detailed on page 229 and 230. Are we agreeing those?
Agreed.
Yes,
Yep.
we are. Yes.
Thank you very much. That brings us on to item 13, urgent decisions. When the agenda was printed, we hadn't taken any urgent decisions between the cabinet meetings, but last week I'm happy to report that we did take an urgent decision that I can now report to cabinet for the record. Philippa and I agreed £1 million should be set aside to provide laptops for some of our underprivileged children to make sure that they don't fall behind on their schooling. And can I just bring you in, Philippa, just to give us a bit of background to it?
Yeah. I mean, as you said, Jeff, I mean, I know, and I think we all recognise it's a very challenging time for children and young people and parents who are helping them with their homeschooling. And our schools have been doing a brilliant job in ensuring that pupils can learn despite the pandemic. But we don't want any child or young person to fall behind simply because they don't have access to a laptop, or they're sharing a laptop, or the only IT device in their home is perhaps a phone or an iPad or a tablet or something like that. So there is a government scheme available. They are distributing 1.3 million devices, and the County Council have already supported that and distributed well over almost 5,000 devices through that scheme. And we've also been supporting other schemes that are running locally through other organisations. The universities, large employers such as BAE have offered 500 devices in good condition. So we've been supporting that as well. But we really wanted to do just that bit more. We've done that in other areas to help children and young people through this pandemic, and we're in an excellent financial position to be able to do something more. So our scheme, which has up to £1 million in funding, will help pupils who still who through those other schemes haven't been able to access a device, or perhaps haven't had the opportunity to access those schemes as yet. We simply don't want anyone to miss out through lack of opportunity. We've already got 1,800 laptops ready to go out, and they're going to be administered through the schools. So for any parents who might be listening in, if this is an issue for you, then please get in touch with your school, because the support is there available for you. So that was the background to us making that decision. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Philippa. Keith.
Sorry, thank you, Leader. Could you just say that this is really important, and I'm very pleased that obviously Philippa and yourself, Leader, were in a position to do this through the work you've done financially and the work that Philippa's done in education. It's really important. You know, children and young people are really important. They are the future. It's nice to see them come along. I live in a nice area here with good schools, and other people just aren't as fortunate, perhaps, as I am to have all the things that we have in these country areas. But it's pleasing for me to see this happen, and I'd like to say a big thank you to this administration for doing it. It means a lot to people, and it will make a real big difference to a lot of people and their children's lives and their education. So thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Azar.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeff. I fully support that decision, and in some ways, it's everything that we can do. Every little bit will make a difference, but there's still lots of children I know in my own area in Pendle who are struggling, and schools have got waiting lists of kids who don't even have a mobile phone at home and are really struggling. Nelson Town Council used part of their preset money last week, and they were distributing laptops this week to some of the primary schools in Nelson. And I'm just wondering, Philippa, whether there's an opportunity. I know that there's computers coming in from British Aerospace and other corporate organisations, which is splendid. Whether there is a message to parish and town councils, because they're all at the point now where they're setting their budgets, and every little bit that they could do to help would make a difference. But also, if they're struggling to purchase them, LCC does have greater purchasing power than some of the smaller organisations, and they might be signposted to our corporate services or whichever the appropriate department is, to make sure that they get good deals and they can then actually buy more computers for their local schools.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you want to come in, Philippa?
Yeah, no, I was just saying it's a good point. I mean, I have a very parish division, and I can tell you I've been out there suggesting that whatever people can do to help, and they're really keen, as you say, to help. But the county council does have a role in taking the lead, which is the purpose of this funding. But if there are any sort of logistical issues about purchasing or anything like that, then we'd be happy to help.
Yeah, absolutely, we will, because we can never do enough, as it were, and we just got to keep on top of it and do as much as we possibly can. And let me say now that if that £1 million isn't enough and we exhaust it very quickly, well, we will make some more money available. You can rest assured. Okay, thank you for that. Item 14 is urgent business. There is no urgent business. So the date of the next meeting is March the 4th of March at 2 o'clock. Under 16, we gave notice of the intention to conduct business in private, and we haven't had any representation. So on 17, I move exclusion of the press and the public. Is that agreed?
Yep.
Great.